And now we continue our tribute to those lost to COVID-19. It is our 23rd Friday doing this as the U.S. approaches a grim milestone of 200,000 lives lost. Tonight, we recognize 5 more. Yolanda Kaur lived by the mantra, "Be exceptional," her husband said. She worked her way up to become a nurse manager in Augusta, Georgia. When she died at 40, she was studying for her master's in nursing. While at the hospital, she met her husband of nearly 10 years. They quickly bonded over their sorority and fraternity memberships. Lively and outgoing, Yolanda never sat still. She loved the outdoors and attending baseball games with her 2 sons. Nina Popova lived to dance. Born in Russia and raised in Paris, her talent took her to New York in 1939 when she joined the original Ballet Russe. Throughout her career, Nina performed on Broadway, danced with what is today the American Ballet Theater, and served as the artistic director of the Houston Ballet. Her daughter said Nina had a strong personality. She was 97 years old. Growing up in Tuscaloosa, Allison Matthews donned bows and pearls, but was an expert in Alabama football. Following in the family business, she went to law school, but never practiced. She wasn't able to give up her career as a medical social worker in a nursing home. Despite her loyalty to the Crimson Tide, the 48-year-old fell in love with an Auburn fan. They married in 2018 after nearly 20 years together. Bernard Fils-Aimé committed his life to activism for immigrant rights. The native of Haiti was a student activist in New York when he met his wife of more than 40 years. Together, they moved to Miami and helped create the Haitian Refugee Center in the 1980s. In 2000, Bernard helped launch a company to provide cell phone service throughout Haiti. Still, he always had time for his family, his son said. The 67-year-old was warm, gave sage advice, and frequently smiled ear to ear. Felicia Florine Campbell was always looking for adventure and risk, her daughter said. The Wisconsin native briefly served in the Marines, moved to Las Vegas, and wrote her dissertation on gambling, and embarked on a 30-day trek in Pakistan in her early 50s. Felicia's daughter described her as funny, opinionated, and strong. The longest-serving professor at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, Felicia was preparing to teach this fall at 89 years old. And we want to thank family members of all these who shared their stories with us. Our hearts go out to you and everyone who has lost loved ones through this pandemic.
Good morning and welcome to another edition of the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. And that video, another touching video about this ongoing pandemic. We want to point out that the video was taken last year, and now there are more than 650,000 lives lost in the United States of America. Today is a special day for the National Newspaper Publishers Association and the Black Press of America. It is our National Leadership Awards reception. We are going to honor tonight Olympic champion Allison Felix, Congresswoman Cori Bush, Senators Raphael Warnock and Cory Booker, as well as Dr. James Hildreth and Dr. Ebony Hilton. And later this afternoon, to kick things off, we had we got several very special conversations that Dr. Chavez and I and Dr. Nasinga Burton had. Dr. Chavez and I spoke with Regina Bell. We are speaking with Gabrielle Union, and Dr. Nasinga Burton has the legendary actor Louis Gossett Jr. So today, big day for the National Newspaper Publishers Association. It's the annual Leadership Awards reception. Join us at www.virtualnnpa2021.com. Don't miss any of the great festivities. We are anticipating some great commentary from Regina Bell. She has a very special surprise for our award winners. You got to tune in. She's at 3 o'clock today. Gabrielle Union, you're going to love this conversation. We are so excited about it. She is at 4 o'clock. Louis Gossett Jr. follows that. It's going to be a great day. So tune in. Yesterday, millions of Americans received a direct deposit into their bank accounts thanks to President Joe Biden's child tax credit payments that many say has already put a huge dent in child poverty rates in the United States. The new survey shows that those in Republican-led states are reaping big time from the Biden-Harris administration's push to end child poverty, and most Democrats say they'd like the payments to continue permanently. This morning, we're going to speak with former Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick about the child tax credit, among other things. He was elected twice, so you know he has a lot to say. He's seen a lot and he's done a lot. So Deval Patrick is coming up. But first, of course, the news. The city of Philadelphia will pay $2 million to a Black woman who was pulled from a car, beaten by officers, and had her toddler used for social media fodder by the police union. Nursing aide Rikia Young was headed home in the early morning hours of October 27, 2020, when she unknowingly drove into a large protest over the police killing of Walter Wallace Jr. She tried to make a three-point turn to get away from the tense scene when officers smashed out her windows with their batons. Philadelphia Mayor Jim Kenney called the treatment of Young absolutely appalling and inexcusable. This terrible incident, he said, which should have never happened to anyone, only further strained the relationships between the police and community. The officers' inexcusable actions that evening prompted an immediate and thorough investigation of the incident and for personnel to be disciplined and held accountable for their egregious conduct. The mayor went on to say that I hope that the settlement and investigations into the officers' actions bring some measure of closure to Miss Young and her family. She was handcuffed and separated from her teenage nephew and 2-year-old son for several hours, and no one was ever charged or cited, according to her lawyer. The hearing impaired toddler lost his hearing aids during the tussle. Unreal that we are continually reporting on this type of behavior by law enforcement. And get this, approximately 16% of Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputies and supervisors, you're not going to believe this, continue to operate and recruit personnel to join in secret cliques and gangs called the Banditos and the Executioners. This, according to a explosive new report that was commissioned by the Los Angeles County Commissioners and the Rand Corporation. The report takes the department to task with authors noting that authorities either can't or won't stop the practice that has cost taxpayers more than $55 million in settlements in cases stemming from lawsuits alleging that the police gangs, inflicted violence and mayhem upon its citizens. Sheriff Alex Villanueva, who fought subpoenas to avoid testifying about the gangs within his department, said on social media yesterday that he would review the report. He says this matter negatively impacts community trust and community members. No kidding, Sheriff. You can't have gangs in the police department. My gosh. Oh my gosh. During the survey, it was a survey taken and they were all testifying in this survey. Deputies expressed mixed opinions as to what actions they felt the department should take. The authors of the report noted. They said 37% of personnel who responded to the survey for which the authors based the report agreed that subgroups, these gangs, should be prohibited. No kidding. I'm sure all of those wonderful good cops out there all around Los Angeles and the nation are saying the same thing. Are you kidding me? However, the results suggest that this subject is divisive within LASD, the Sheriff's Department. The subject of gangs is divisive among the rank and file. They fight each other over this. You got to join. There's nothing wrong with it, some of them say. It's unbelievable. We're going to continue to follow that story here at blackpressusa.com and most of our media partners in the Black press. Well, yesterday, millions of Americans received a direct deposit into their bank accounts, again, thanks to the Biden-Harris administration's child tax credit, which already is being credited with bringing so many children out of poverty, particularly children of color. Here to talk about it this morning, we are honored to have the former two-time governor of Massachusetts, Deval Patrick. Good morning, Governor Patrick.
Good morning to you, Stacy. Thanks for having me.
Uh,
Especially on the same day you have that amazing list of awardees. That's incredible.
Well, that's why we have you. You're just as amazing, Governor.
Oh, God, thank you.
Governor, the child tax credit, many people saw it hit their bank accounts yesterday. Talk about that, please. As far as, again, we mentioned that it has helped to ease or bring many out of child poverty. Can you talk about that a little bit and the importance of it?
It's enormously important and high impact. You know, the child tax credit really is just a little help for parents raising kids. And it's basically a tax cut. So it's an income-based advantage for people depending on how much you make. The more you make, the less you get. The more children you have, you get a credit for each child. And it is a little way to take the edge off the many, many millions of parents in this country who need some help closing the gap, who are just trying to do their best by their kids. And I want to point out, and I say this as a Democrat who doesn't think you have to hate Republicans to be a good Democrat. Not a single Republican supported this initiative by the Biden-Harris administration and the Democrats in the Senate and the House. Not one vote in favor. And yet, already of the, 90% of parents in America who are eligible for this based on income, 40% of those children have been lifted out of poverty with just the first check.
40%. 40%. Let that sink in. That is amazing. So, Governor, this idea, it wasn't a new idea, but as you said, right, you have so much pushback. You know, you don't have to be, like you said, a hater of Republicans or the hater of Democrats, right? Why can't most, and because everybody's not going to get it, but why can't most get it? We saw the divisiveness in this country the last 4 years. We saw that, and now it's spilled over.
Yes.
Why don't they get it? Isn't it about the constituents?
I think you'd want to believe it's about the constituents, but more and more, you know, if all of these, if politics has always been a sort of a blend of substance and performance art, it's like nowadays among many elected officials, it's all performance and the substance be damned. Excuse me, but the substance is put to one side. Then what you see emerging is a sort of a cartoon of the Republican Party. You know, as I said, think of this as a tax cut for the working poor, for working parents. When is the last time you heard a Republican object to a tax cut? Now, when it comes to a company or a wealthy individual, they're all for it. Cut taxes on, by the way, the failed thesis that it somehow stimulates the economy. There's no evidence of that, but it's an idea or a concept or a tactic that has taken hold. In this case, through credits to working families who actually use the money to buy food, to help make ends meet, it is both good for those children, and we ought to care about those children because they are our children, all of our children, but it's also good for the economy because it's direct spending that is stimulative. So a very good thing. And the debate right now is whether to extend it, make it permanent, instead of just through, I believe, the end of this year, as it is in current legislation.
Well, given the success already, it should be no debate, right?
It should be. But, you know, as I say, it's like there are so many ways in which Republicans seem to think that the better thing is to keep poor people poor, rather than help them help themselves, help them just a little bit. This is not about, you know, folks sitting around eating bonbons when they ought to be out working. It's not like these are working people who, because of suppressed wages, because of a lack of opportunity, in some cases a lack of preparation, aren't able to earn a living wage, aren't able to make ends meet. And, you know, when I was growing up as a kid on the South Side, you were under the jurisdiction of every adult on the block, right? You messed up down the street in front of Miss Jones. She'd go upside your head as if you were hers and then call home. So you got it 2 times, right? And I think what those adults were trying to get across to us was that in a community, you have a stake in your neighbors' dreams and struggles as well as your own. Well, I think the fundamental question here that is called by the child tax credit, and frankly, many of the other proposals of the Biden administration, is, are we going to be a national community or not? Are we going to act like we have some stake in each other or not? And I think the Biden-Harris administration and the Democrats in the House and the Senate have put a stake in the ground and said, yes, we do belong to each other. We're not about doing everything for each other. We're just about the role of government in helping people help themselves.
Yeah, you mentioned about this community responsibility, and Miss Jones. Many of us had that, right? I had it in school.
Course.
I'll never forget. You know, the 2 teachers that I've had in grade school and throughout college, I remember the most. My 4th grade teacher and my 6th grade teacher. My 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Sales, she had this ruler, this block. It was like very thick. She called it her friendly persuader, and she'd throw it at you, hit you with it, and you had to get it and give it back to her. Whereas Mr. Watson, my 6th grade teacher, he'd punch you in the arm or he'd grab you by your ear. And then, like you said, when you went home, you got it too.
You got it too.
Yeah, question from our audience. Nicole McDaniel says she wants you to speak on how the payment may impact the child tax payment may impact recipients at tax time.
Sure. So the way it works, if I understand it correctly, is that you can elect to receive up to half of it as a monthly disbursement, and then the balance of it is paid out at tax time, and that may be a credit against taxes you owe, or a direct check to you. Some people are doing it that way. In fact, I can't tell you today how many people have made that election, but in terms of just offsetting your daily or monthly expenses, that's a smart way to go about it. And but some people will wait until it's time to file your annual federal taxes and recoup that entire credit at that time. And the credit, as I said, is income dependent. So the more you make, the less you get.
Yeah, and I know that I've heard administration officials encourage those to take the payments monthly because of the poverty situation, and child poverty has been really bad. It's probably, Governor, and perhaps you'll agree with this, one of the things that we don't talk about enough.
We don't talk about it enough. You know, there are kids all over this country who are trapped in poverty. So the reason I use that term, trapped in poverty, I grew up poor. You know, we were on welfare for much of the time when I was a kid, but it was still a time then in the 50s and the 60s where government made investment in the kinds of things that enabled people to lift themselves and their families to a different place, in education, in housing, in food stamps, as we called them at the time. We've been ratcheting back on all of that, you know, subsidized student loans and so forth. We've been ratcheting back on all of that. And so we are now in cycles of generational poverty. And in the richest nation in the history of humankind, that is shameful. It doesn't have to be like that. It was, we started down this path of retreating from the idea of a national community and trying to do what we could through our government to help each other help themselves. Way back at or before the time of Reagan, this whole idea was that if you just give all the benefits to the very rich, it will, as the term you remember, Stacey, trickle down to everybody else.
Ronald Reagan.
Well, it turns out that was a fallacy all along. Everybody knew it was a fallacy, but it had a kind of a political energy that just took on. That's where income inequality started to really metastasize, to grow, and to stick. And that's what President Biden and Vice President Harris and their team are trying to turn around right now.
Yeah, let me throw this question to you from our producer. He says, is some of the resistance to these policies evidence of the growing and continuing failure of many Americans to vote in their own self-interest?
Well, I want to be careful not to blame people for not voting. The fact that we don't have enough participation, that our rates is low, is a deeply troubling thing to me. But as a I've run. When I ran for governor, it's the first time I run for anything, and I ran very much at the grassroots, real close to people, both tactically because in our very kind of insular and inward-looking political establishment here in Massachusetts, it was just hard to break in, especially somebody new who was trying to cut the line. But also philosophically because I wanted to learn from and be close to regular people, all sorts of people, and invite them to see their stake in their own civic and political future. And so we had huge participation comparatively speaking, but still not, the 90+% that you see in other Western democracies. And I think a lot of what I learned and saw stumping for candidates in other states in the midterms and in the general election in the last couple of cycles, is that the invitation to people to be a part of politics, when it doesn't happen enough, and when it happens at election time and not in between elections, not enough. So the genius in some respects in many respects, in my view, of what Stacey Abrams and her allies did in Georgia over a decade was to build a permanent grassroots infrastructure, was to connect to people and stay connected to people and let, frankly, the grassroots determine what the agenda ought to be. So I think there's a kind of there's a humility and a patience and listening that has been missing from a lot of our politics. And I think this has been true on the Democratic side as well over the years, which has caused people to wonder whether it matters to vote. Yeah. And I'm here to tell you it does matter. It's going to matter even more. It was critical in 2020 because we had a racist in chief who was running for re-election. And who had given permission to a large part of our country to put their foot on our, or as it were, knee on our neck, and frankly on the necks of a whole lot of people who were marginalized and left out and left back. It's going to be even more critical in the midterms coming up, with all of the voter suppression laws that have been put in place. In many states, more of them trying to do so, and the United States Supreme Court basically giving a green light to go ahead and do so. And so we're going to have to overwhelm the barriers that are put in front of us so that we can insist and empower our Congress to continue the progress that the Biden administration is trying to make right now.
Well, there's two things there with that. The voting you have, and this goes directly to Senator Manchin. People say, well, it's hard to just put it on one person. Well, he's the one that's outspoken about his reticence to do any reform with the filibuster, and he's reluctant to do really concrete voting rights legislation. This is the Democrats' best chance, isn't it, to try and kind of correct the wrongs of the last 4 years and put everybody back on an even playing field, even when it comes to voting rights. But you have Democrat holdouts, at least two of them. Your thoughts on Senator Manchin's position and your thoughts on what should or you would suggest be done when it comes to the filibuster?
So a couple things here. I want to separate the question of the filibuster from the question of the substance of what is being proposed, because it is Senator Manchin is a friend of mine. He's someone I've known since we were both governors. He's frustrating me too right now, but it is not true that he opposes any voting rights reform. In fact, I think it was just yesterday, Stacey, the compromise bill, a blend of what is in the so-called For the People Act and in the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, I'd say the strongest parts of each were agreed to yesterday in the Democratic caucus, including Senator Manchin. And when Senator Manchin came out and said, I think these are the things, some weeks or months ago, these are the things I can support, there were a number of grassroots activists who spoke up at the time and said, actually, that's a good bill. Well, that's the bill in front of the Senate today. And Senator Manchin said he wanted that compromise because he thought that he could bring enough Republicans along so that the filibuster could be overcome. Well, not 15 minutes after that compromise was announced, the minority leader, Mitch McConnell, said no Republican will vote for it. So we will see. I think it's important for Leader Schumer to bring the matter to the floor for a vote. If it is voted down because we can't surmount the filibuster rules, I think that Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema, I think is the other holdout from Arizona, will have all the evidence that they can possibly have, real evidence, not speculation, that this will not happen without a reform of the filibuster rule. And the filibuster rule has to be reformed, if not the filibuster eliminated. First of all, it was invented to make it hard to pass civil rights laws. Right. So it has a sort of smelly origins to begin with. And have no doubt, if the shoe were on the other foot, the Republicans would change the rule in a minute.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
They understand the importance of outcomes. Yeah. Yeah. And so if the debate is over preserving the tradition of the filibuster on the one hand, and preserving a genuinely participatory democracy on the other, it's an obvious choice, it seems to me.
Yeah, and I dig Governor Patrick. Don't talk about my friend. That's my friend. Don't talk about.
No, but look, people. I'm not close to this. I'm not in the behind the scenes stuff, but in Washington. But I can tell you, having led the Civil Rights Division in the Justice Department in the Clinton administration, Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, which was gutted by the Supreme Court a few years ago during the Obama administration, would have prevented the kind of voter suppression that's going on right now in the South. Yeah. And the rationale of the Supreme Court majority in eliminating the requirement that states come forward and show that their changes would not suppress the vote was, well, times have changed. People don't do that anymore. Not 10 minutes after they issued that report, all these states led by Republicans started to make these oppressive changes. And I think that's also revealing, if I may say, Stacey, it's more and more clear to me that the Republican Party is out of ideas, and they decided they can't win without cheating. And so they have put all their chits on gerrymandering congressional districts. You're going to see a lot of that now with the census data out, trying to engineer election outcomes, and frankly, more election outcomes in favor of more and more extreme hard right radicals. They're trying to make sure that not every vote, not every eligible voter gets a chance to vote conveniently and securely, all under this ruse that they're protecting the integrity of the vote, which has not been in question, at least factually, for a very long time, certainly not in the 2020 elections. And one of the most pernicious parts of the initiatives that they're doing, and I'm sorry to go on, but I just want to make sure all of your viewers and listeners understand this, are rules in Georgia, in Texas, and elsewhere that now say that if the elected Republican leadership don't like the outcome of the election officials and the election board and so on, they can exclude those officials from participation and count the ballots themselves. And that, to me, is just, it's a setup for trouble. So, we need this legislation out of the Congress, and we need it promptly. And I'm awfully glad that Senator Schumer is moving it to the floor to a vote. And I think all of us have to be in touch with our senators and frankly with Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema, even if they are not your senators, and say we got to have this legislation. We need your vote for it.
Yeah, and real quick, I know we're out of time, but there's two questions I wanted to get to right quick. Nicole McDaniel says, sounds like the fight is still with the filibuster rule that needs the support of all Dems. But the thing is, the Democrats, even if all the Dems supported it, because this is not something they can use reconciliation on, it does not matter if they don't get 10 Republican votes. And Bobby Henry says, Brother Deval, who are you grooming? He says, for political leadership role, we need more like you. Send your thoughts. Is there anybody you're grooming, Governor? And before you answer that question, just that I want to bring on the president and CEO of the National Newspaper Publishers Association to say hello, Dr. Benjamin F. Chavis Jr.
Dr. Chavis, good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning, Brother Patrick. And listen, man, thank you so much for your leadership, your long-term leadership. You were the best governor that Massachusetts has ever had, and I've known you for many decades when you were at the Justice Department, and we look forward for your continued leadership. Just on behalf of the Black press of America, we salute you and thank you for all that you continue to do, not only for Black America, but for all Americans and for all people in the world.
I appreciate you, Dr. Chavis. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah. So is anyone you're
I'm so overwhelmed by the kind words. I forgot the questions, but let me just say, first of all, the filibuster is part of the debate. The filibuster, I think, can be changed. I wish this were a smaller and an easier course to victory. But above all, it points out, back to the point of voting, how important it is that we widen our margins in the Senate and in the House and elect more Democrats, so some of these procedural rules don't get in the way of justice. And on the question of grooming somebody, it is an exciting time that so many young people have stepped up and stepped forward. And I would say, as a generation, sort of put their collective foot down and said, we're not going to keep dancing around and away from social and economic justice for all of us. And I'm just glad to be alive right now to watch and help as I can.
Well, we're so thankful to Governor Deval Patrick from the great state of Massachusetts, two-time Governor Deval Patrick. We certainly appreciate you. Dr. Chavis, we are going to let you tell everybody what's coming up tonight.
Well, thank you. Yes, our National Leadership Awards reception tonight is virtual because of the pandemic. Starts at 3 p.m. We have Gabrielle Union and then Regina Bell. And of course, we so many people that we're giving awards to tonight include Dr. James Hildreth, the president of Meharry Medical College, Senator Cory Booker, Senator Raphael Warnock, Congresswoman Cori Bush, Dr. Ebony Hilton, just many, and Sister Felix, the gold medalist, the Olympic medalist, won more Olympic medals than any other human being. All are going to be saluted by the Black press this evening. So please tune in at www.nmpa2021.com.
Virtual NMPA2021.com.
Right, virtual NMPA 2021.com. But I just want to again say a pardon, farewell to Governor Patrick, and just again to thank him. And we had more brothers like Deval Patrick. We'll be much further down the road toward full freedom, justice, and equality.
Bless you. Thank you.
Well, thanks again, everyone. Again, starting at 3 o'clock today, it's a huge day for the National Newspaper Publishers Association. Of course, the Black Press of America, 194 years, we've been your trusted voice. And every year we have the National Leadership Awards, and it's going to be really great. It's going to be fun. Trust me when I tell you, you're not going to want to miss Regina Bell's conversation beginning at 3. You're not going to want to miss Gabrielle Union's conversation after that. And, of course, Louis Gossett Jr. We got a great lineup So stay tuned, virtualnnpa2021.com, and let it be known. Remember this, even if you're on the right track, you'll get run over if you just sit there. We will see you this afternoon. Everybody have a great day.